Hey folks, Tony here, and today we're sitting down to talk Tribes 3 Rivals. That's right, we have a brand new Tribes game. The first alpha test for the game just went live last night. They only sent out about 2,000 keys. I managed to get one. I played a couple hours of this game wow. Can you tell? I haven't had my coffee yet. I played a couple hours of the game this morning. I had a really good time, and I wanted to sit down and talk about it. I've recorded this a few times now, and I realized that I also want to have sort of a larger discussion here about the appeal, the difficulties of getting into movement shooters as a whole. And we're going to sort of base that discussion around Tribes, because I think this game does a really good job of demonstrating, honestly, some of the best sides of FPSZ, of movement shooters. Honestly, I'm even going to go as far as to say arena shooters as well, in really giving the player a lot of different ways in which they can play the game. Tribes allows a variety of skill sets to really easily put themselves on display, making it, I think, easier than just about any other game in this genre to get into. And I know some people are going to disagree with me because they're like, Tribes is the hardest game ever, bro. That's why we love it. This shit's so difficult. I hate myself. I have always disagreed with that sentiment, and we'll get into that later. Let's just actually talk about what it's like to play Tribes 3 Rivals. This is being developed by Prophecy Games and published by Prophecy Games. They are a small team that was actually originally established under the roof of Hi-Rez, but at some point they left Hi-Rez. They were able to take the Tribes franchise with them, which pretty fucking cool, by the way. It's definitely the only reason we're getting a Tribes game in 2024 and playing one in early alpha here in 2023. They do have plans for larger scale stuff. So if you're, a Tribes fan going, where's the big 64 player stuff? Where's the vehicles? They have plans for all of that, but they're a small team. They're starting small. They're building out the core of the game and testing the core infrastructure of the game, servers, as well as gameplay balancing, class balancing, weapon balancing, movements, physics, all that stuff with these early tests. That being said, what I played was like shockingly polished. I actually really love the feel and sound of this game. I think those are two things that they nail right off the rip. And I was talking with some friends about Tribes when this was initially announced, and one of them was, sort of talking about why they really never stuck into the game. A bunch of them had played Tribes Ascend, and one of his biggest issues was sort of just the lack of feedback the game had with, shooting people. This game almost immediately does away with that by including hit markers, having damage numbers, and also just having some really great sound design behind all of that. There's some really nice sound effects work here, whether it be just the impact of explosives hitting another player or even hitting the ground, or the actual hit markers for when you deal damage to someone or kill someone. These are nice touches that I think for a lot of new players it's kind of the standard. People expect them from shooters nowadays, but also it's direct feedback. And knowing that just shooting the side of a hill in this game generally feels pretty satisfying, I think means the game is off to a great start in that department. We also get some really solid weapon animations. I gotta say, I'm like super obsessed with the shotgun though. Having the sling on the shotgun waving around while I'm zooming all over the place, and then just this really heavy, satisfying pump animation. They killed it with that. The shotgun is like such a standout to me, but even beyond that, I'm enjoying a lot of the weapon designs here. I mean, it's Tribes, right? It's always been funky. It's always been sci-fi, energy-based stuff, but there's a few that I just really have already fallen in love with, and whether they change them or not, I'm kind of just happy where the game is at, at least in this early phase. As far as the skiing stuff goes, though, I think this is also an area that they've really nailed, because skiing at like a medium speed, let's just say the speed of the average new player, still feels good. And when you do get into those higher speeds for the first time, you get some nice wind effects, some sound effects, some visual, distortion going on. It's really nuanced, but it's really well implemented. I think it genuinely showcases that the team understands, what an important part of Tribes is. It's the fucking skiing, dude. It's the, it's the movement stuff. And if you can make that stuff feel good for the new player, for the average player, then of course it's going to feel good on, the higher end, and it's also going to help people work towards being better at those parts of the game. If you can get a taste of it and it's like, oh yeah, this is great, then you're going to want to naturally shoot for the higher end, for the higher speeds, if you will. And that's what I found, especially as a totally subpar player of this game who was, really just getting a feel for it for the first time in over a decade, was that when I did even just get a nice bit of skiing going, I was like, yeah, this feels great. This is nice. So they've already done a great job there. And it's, easily one of the reasons that I had such a good time with the game this morning, despite being atrocious. So let's talk more about the actual just function of the game, how things play here in this 5v5 CTF setting. We do have a weight-based class system, loadout-based class system as well, with each of the 3 weights also being aligned with a certain role and having a selection of weapons and equipment that are somewhat specific to their loadout. So we've got the light or the capper role, the medium or the midfielder, and then the heavy or the defender. They again all have a selection of kit and belt stuff. They all do share the same perks currently, but I imagine we'll see that get expanded in the future. But that's pretty much the setup. You pick one of these 3 roles, you grab your loadout, you head out into the map, the slopes, if you will, and you get to defending, you get to attacking, you get to skiing. For those of you who do not know what Tribes is at all, and you're like, okay, why is he saying skiing? Why am I seeing all this weird movement? Tribes takes place in a universe where at some point they invented power skis. I imagine this was maybe sort of reverse to what we get in the real world, where something was designed for luxury and then adapted to combat purposes. But who knows? I don't know the lore, and who cares really. Anyway, it's really cool regardless. But power skis are used both for luxury, just generally going out on the holidays doing some power skiing. They're also used for combat and for blood sport, at least in the past games. So the way this all works is that you go out onto a slope, you start to slide down it, you toggle on or hold on your skis, and then you ski down it instead. This allows you to start building up momentum. Now, when you're going to go up a slope, which you're going to have to do eventually, you make use of your jetpack, feathering it to basically glide your way up that slope. And when you do it right and you get enough speed, you launch yourself into the air. Now that you're floating in the air, you start to aim for that next slope, because you want to land and swoop into it just perfectly to start building that momentum and maintaining it, increasing your speed, increasing the distance you'll be able to glide or leap between slopes. And that's Tribes. You're skiing. Now, the way that you're actually going to engage with this mechanic can vary depending on your role. If you are a light or capper, you're going to be going zoom, zoom. You're going to be trying to make really crafty routes that allow you to move across the map as quickly as possible, and then eventually make your way over to the enemy team's base and swoop the flag as quickly as possible, because the enemy team's base is defended not just by defending players, but by turrets. These turrets can be destroyed and they go on sort of a cooldown before they're repaired and brought back up, but there's a good chance they're going to be there. So the faster you can get through, grab that flag, and carry that momentum back towards your base, the better off you're going to be. A huge part of playing the capper is not killing people. It's not worrying about your kill count. It is purely about building those routes that are going to differ obviously per map and per situation to get into the enemy base and get out as quickly as possible, losing as little life as possible so you can make those full returns. Now, if you're playing the medium or the midfielder, you're definitely going to be engaging with skiing, and in some cases, perhaps even more, or at least in, let's just say, a more frequent restart context than the light would. You're going to be spending a lot of time positioning yourself, attempting to pick off enemy cappers, or maybe even just do some damage to other midfielders so they can't shut down your capper. So you're doing a lot of repositioning, a lot of resetting. There's an opportunity here to get really good at running like super tight skiing routes that are allowing you to very quickly reposition. But I think for new players, you spend a lot of time maybe even not skiing, sort of holding a high point, but in a position at any point ready to drop in on the slopes to do a chase, whether it's to move in to defend or move in to attack. Now, if you're playing the heavy and defending, It's not to say you're never going to use skiing. That's just not true. Skiing is still the quickest way to get around, but you're probably using it in much smaller spurts, moving between the base and your own personal sort of frontline defense points that you're going to be establishing throughout the course of the game. I have some Defender footage. I actually really like playing Defender, especially because I'm not that great at skiing, but I think I'm pretty decent at shooting and was getting better as I was playing. One of the things I like to do, though, is to start to try and look and see the sort of routes that the enemy cappers and midfielders were taking, and start to set up, you know, sort of go-to positions. Say to myself, okay, I feel comfortable reaching out from base that far. I'll dump some mines back here. If I need to return, I can, you know, drop down the slope and usually get back in position. And that's a big part of playing that Defender, right? Is finding your sort of own personal defense points on the map where you can comfortably still cover base and quickly get into position to deal out that heavy damage on cappers when the time comes. So again, everybody engages with skiing, but to a different extent. And that's kind of where I think I want to move into the sort of larger discussion about the appeal of this game, the appeal of movement shooters as a whole. As I've mentioned a few times throughout the course of this video, people love to get into that mindset of like, yo, bro, game's hard, dude. That's why it's good. This game is hard. Which is funny, because it is like sort of a weird, you know, get good mindset that these communities love to build up. It's super unappealing. It doesn't help anybody. And the worst part of it is when you get those rare occasions where people just constantly mock a new player. Like, you know, they like to get a laugh out of someone struggling with the game, which is totally unhelpful and fucking not a good way to bring new players into your community by any means. I'm not saying that this is the sole reason movement shooters die. I'm just saying it's a terrible mindset to have, a terrible mindset to spread around, especially when you could be praising the small moments where new players find success, those moments where they get a taste of the game. It's those things that we should be reinforcing and helping new players understand, like, that's why we play this game, dude. That little taste you just got right there, that like, you know, half perfect route you just ran for the first time that got us that cap, no matter how rough or sketchy it was, that's what this game is about. And that's the great thing about Tribes, is that having these three roles, having a variety of ways in which you can engage with the more difficult part of the games, the more difficult parts of the game, which is going to vary from player to player. That could be movement, that could be shooting, could be a combination of the both. It just gives you options for how you play as a new player. So if I'm playing something like Titanfall 2, yeah, I could use the better weapons, you know, and maybe that helps. But at the end of the day, if I'm struggling with shooting, if I'm struggling with movement, it's kind of a game where you just have to do both. That's not to say that you can't sit back and play a little bit slower and adopt around it. And I've talked about this for hundreds of hours over the course of my Titanfall 2 videos, where I, you know, tried to help new players. But at the end of the day, it's not quite like Tribes, where in Tribes, if I'm a really terrible fucking shot, but I'm great, or at least very interested in the movement tech of the game, I can dedicate my time towards that and become a really good capper. Like, I'm not saying that you're necessarily good at the start, but maybe it just interests you. Maybe it's a thing that you find fun right from the get-go. The sort of thing that even when you're struggling with it, you're still enjoying it because you see the potential, you see the enjoyment there. You can work towards that, and you can just focus on being a capper. But maybe you're someone coming from another first-person shooter who really has good aim. You know, you come from Counter-Strike, you come from Halo, you pick up on the projectile-based gameplay very quickly, and dropping an honor fuser right in someone's lap becomes something that you can do with relative consistency within the first, like, 10 hours of playing the game. You can focus on that. You can play a midfielder, and while you're focused on dropping those shots in people's pants, you can start to build up your movement. You can build up your skiing. You can get a better feel for it, just to build your routes for yourself. Having a game that has like so much variance in how you can engage with the mechanics really just gives a lot of room for personal improvement in a way where you can still experience the fun and satisfaction of doing well, you know? Like, this game isn't gonna hit you with a wall and just say, well, it turns out you couldn't do one of 10 things we were asking you to do, so there's just no fun for you here at all. That's not the case with Tribes, and I think that's very much the beauty of this game in a way that I think it really genuinely stands out amongst the sea of movement and arena shooters and other FPSs even. So if you're new to movement shooters and you're looking at Tribes and you're saying, hey, this looks like this could be fun, don't be intimidated. Give this game a shot when it comes out. Consider jumping in, see what it has to offer, see where your strengths and weaknesses are, and gravitate towards those strengths. Play to your strengths and worry about training and building up those weaknesses as time goes on. Because that's what these games are all about. Ask yourself this. Would you love to sit down every single weekend with a group of friends and play a game that you look forward to playing, not because there's new seasonal content, not because there's a new battle pass filled with cosmetics, but purely because you can't wait to get that next game in, because the game itself is so fun and so satisfying and so rewarding, and you just can't wait to get back in to get a little better at all of it? Then a game like Tribes is 100% going to be for you. There will be that initial barrier for entry, but trust me, once you find that one little piece of the game where you can see the light at the end of the tunnel and say, okay, I get this. This is fun. I want to get better at this. I think just a lot of modern games are really concerned with designing strange addictive loops, right? They are glorified Skinner boxes. They're all about how can we intermittently and strategically reward the player with some superfluous, wow, I can't speak this morning, superfluous item that will keep them playing again and again. Switch all of that out, and instead you have a game that organically reaches out to you with a reward that you chased down of your own accord. And that reward at the end of the day is simply getting better at the game, finding new ways to have fun, realizing that this experience offers you a practically endless amount of personal satisfaction to chase. New routes to discover as the capper, new setups for defending your base as the defender, new traps, and new tactics to deploy as the midfielder. These are the traits of what make movement-based FPS games so fucking good and addictive. Listen, I've got a friend. You might know him. His name's Derek, aka Iniquity. This man has thousands and thousands of hours in Titanfall 2, a game that has not seen a proper update in years, a game that has next to no development support outside of the kind-hearted Respawn janitor who occasionally updates the weekly playlist. But he keeps playing because he's not interested in chasing a carrot on a stick. He's interested in what the game actually has to offer him, the core gameplay experience that allows him to just have fun time and time again. These are the sorts of things that classic FPS games, movement-based FPS games, have offered for forever. But they do ask a little bit of you as a player, perhaps a little bit more than other games do. But I see the Call of Duty kids out there. I see them, right? They want the movement. They crave it. They're fucking obsessed with slide canceling and all of this ridiculous shit. And those games just barely reward them for it. In fact, more often than not, the developers of those games understand that these things don't fit with the majority of their audience, and they remove them, they cap them off, they neuter them. Please, I'm begging you, these games exist. The game you've been looking for, it's right here all along. Tribes is just one of many. Give it a shot. You might find yourself absolutely obsessed. I want to give a huge shout out to the folks over at Prophecy. I hope them the best with this initial test and future tests. I, for one, cannot wait to throw money at them. I had an absolute blast playing the game this morning. I'm looking forward to my little one going to bed tonight so I can hop on and catch the servers while they're nice and full and get absolutely decimated by some vets while I continue to work on my midfield and defender play. If you had a chance to play in the test, I'd love to hear your thoughts, whether you're a new player or a veteran player. And if you're someone looking from the outside in at Tribe saying, what the fuck is this? I'd like to hear your thoughts as well. All of the information, links you need to sign up for future tests, as well as learn more about this game, will be down in the description below. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me, listening to me ramble. Take care of yourselves out there, folks. See you in the next one.